You're watching News in Depth on TVP World with me, Aaron Darman. Tonight, we're heading north, way north, to the Arctic Circle, which is fast becoming one of the most contested regions in the world. Why? Well, with global warming melting the ice, it's much easier to access the Arctic's natural resources, which are estimated to hold about 30% of untapped natural gas. And that means Beijing, Moscow, Washington and the European continent are in a race for influence. Joining me to break all of this down, both the vast landscape and this developing story, is Roksana Juarez, Managing Editor at TVP World. Good evening.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
A pleasure to have you here. I want to pull up this map to start off with, because this is what we are talking about of the Arctic region. Greenland, Russia, Iceland, Sweden, Canada. You can see at the top of the planet how this looks. And you've recently returned from Iceland. You've spoken to a wide range of officials, of experts in this space. So just walk me through the contest that is going on in the Arctic right now.
It's great that we have this map, because it gives you it's a different map than the map that we are usually looking at. But it gives you some kind of an idea what we are dealing with. These countries are very close to each other, and they are competing in each other in the Arctic as well. And Iceland, let us understand it. There are three dynamics in this region: climate change, geopolitics, and military cooperation. And in the Iceland, we learned that everything is driven by climate change, which is the fastest moving in this region. But also, Iceland is very specific because it's a founding member of NATO, but it doesn't have a standing army. But somehow, it's also a guard of the security in this region.
You mentioned the climate change, and I mentioned it in my intro about the fact that global warming is melting the ice, and as a result opening up these opportunities. So we're seeing a more contested region. Many of our viewers will know about Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, of course. I mean, how has that impacted what is going on in the north?
It changed everything, because we used to have this. And people who we talked to in the island, in Iceland, told us that they used to have a peaceful cooperation. That's how they called it. They were cooperating to maintain this fragile area.
Well, the fragile region, right? The
fragile region, but also fragile environment. They were working side by side, but after the war started, Russia stopped caring about it. They also lost a lot of brain power. And they were excluded from Arctic Council, for example, and many other research organizations. So that's what changed. And they are also moving very fast in the region, and it's very bad for the environment over there, for many reasons we will be talking about.
For sure, for sure. I mean, we hear this term low tension region, which of course refers to the Arctic's post-Cold War era. I'm interested, Roksana, whether or not, as we sit here today, that's still the case, because some suggest that this region is now facing those Cold War rivalries all over again.
Yeah, it's not the case anymore, that's for sure. And that's what we learned in Iceland. And we asked the same question to everyone we spoke to. And the question was, are we witnessing the Cold War comeback? So let's listen.
I say we are definitely seeing a variation of the Cold War return to the Arctic. Now the discussion these days is all about great powers and spheres of influence and fights over resources. So we're certainly seeing something similar.
I think we see a spillover of the war in Ukraine, at least affecting everything that's going on in the Arctic. We can see it in the Arctic Council. We can see it at Arctic Parliamentarians, where I'm the chair. But we can also see it here. We also see the shutdown is actually in U.S. is actually affecting the Arctic work right now.
In what way?
We don't have U.S. representatives at the conference this year.
Well, I think the circumstances are much different in some regards. We're definitely, I think the whole world is feeling the geopolitical landscape and how it's affecting each of their own countries. And we're definitely feeling it in northern Canada, in the Arctic, which is likely why we've created the Northern and Arctic Affairs Ministry, which I'm overseeing.
I mean, there you have officials from all around the Arctic, even Canada, which to partners in Europe feels like far away. But of course, as we know, Canada has been a significant partner for Europe, a reliable partner for Europe, and obviously trying to shape up in the Arctic as well. I want to talk about Russia because we hear all this talk about the Kremlin sizing up the NATO alliance for an attack. Mark Rutte warning of an attack in the coming years. What type of military build-up or political pressure can we expect from the Kremlin, particularly in the north?
So despite all the sanctions, Russia is investing in the Arctic,
right,
and they are doing a lot. But besides of investing, they are also conducting military drills, like we saw this year, Zapad 2025. The Arctic piece was quite rich, I would say. And they also are conducting drills with China.
So they're considering, I mean, they're considering the Arctic region when they're doing these drills.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a huge part of this exercise. We were focusing, of course, on what was happening near the eastern flank, but yes, the Arctic part was a very intense. They tested hypersonic missiles, for example. So yeah, that's the case. And they are also, what's interesting is that they are also investing in people living in this area, because the conditions around the Arctic circles are not easy. The weather is severe. You cannot grow anything. So everything you eat when you live there is coming by sea. So people are completely dependent on the ships that are bringing food. And people are being brought there because nobody wants to live there. So you need to you need to make people want it. So the wages around the Arctic Circle in Russia are higher for about 30 to 40%. So that's why they are, they are convincing people to move over there and to work there and live there and bring their families over there. So this is another part of investment from Russia that we can observe over there.
Interesting, because clearly trying to incentivize the like you say, the moving of not just individuals but families there to set up their lives. Yeah. I mean, add to that Beijing. I want to look onto the other side of the economic equation, because is there a case to be made that the economic arrival of countries like China, even like Russia, that the Arctic, given the isolation, would see that as hugely beneficial, that ports in the region would jump at the opportunity to do business with China and Russia, because some kind of investment now is better than none?
It's a great question, but we'll see about that in the upcoming year for sure.
Okay.
Because there was a big conversation about Northern Sea Route this year. This will be exploited in a wider range for sure, but it's not going to happen tomorrow, because the conditions in this area are, as I said, are severe. To swim through this route, you have to be prepared for that. And the Chinese they sent one ship through this route this year, and it even appeared in Gdańsk port and we witnessed that ship coming to Europe from China within that route. But it's not going to happen very often, because even in winter, even in summer, you need to wait for a weather window to get through this Northern Sea Road. And China would love to use it more often, because it saves them time, money, energy, twice comparing to the usual route through Suez Canal. So, but if it's going to be used more often, we'll see about that.
Well, and one report out this month reportedly shows 1/3 of Arctic shipping traffic along that Northern Sea route involving sanctioned vessels of Russia's shadow fleet. So, do you see any potential or any reality where this is some kind of a criminal highway, an ability for Russia to push its vessels through, but not a place where the West can do business?
Absolutely, and it's happening. The shadow fleet in the Arctic is very much present as its presence present in the Baltic Sea. And it's also these are also vessels that are conducting activities that are a big question mark from the NATO countries. Norway witnessed that as well when there was a cable cutting in 2022. And this similar activities that we are observing in the Baltic Sea are happening in the Arctic as well from Russia.
I guess the question is, and it's interesting you mentioned the Baltic Sea because we often talk about the Baltic security, the NATO response in the Baltic region. I was in Finland earlier this year, and NATO launched this Baltic Sentry mission to ensure that this cable cutting wouldn't happen, or at least deter that. Are we in a world where NATO has a unified strategy for the Arctic as well, or some kind of a strategy to maintain security and defence there? Or is it just member states, you mentioned Norway, Sweden, Finland, kind of doing it on their own?
That's interesting, because about 2 weeks ago NATO has changed the command and changed the structure a bit, and put the command in Norfolk, Virginia, which is in the US. It's the biggest naval port in the whole world, and this place will be responsible for the Arctic and Atlantic, and the command in Denmark will be responsible for Europe and Baltic. But many experts are criticizing this move, and they are saying that Baltics and the Arctic should be treated as a whole. So there's this one article I found on Arctic Today from the expert who is criticizing that, saying that NATO still lacks a coherent, dedicated doctrine for the Nordic theater, and that instead the region is managed through a patchwork of pre-existing concepts, legacy, Cold War assumptions, national doctrines, and so on and so forth.
So patchwork. So
patchwork,
in a way,
meaning that every country has a different objectives and different priorities. And Finland, you mentioned, they will be focusing on border with Russia. Sweden will be focusing on air defense. Norway will probably take care of Svalbard. That will be their priority. Probably we'll be talking about that in a second. So, but you know, some are criticizing this. Some see it as a great advantage, something that can be used by NATO.
So there is some kind of a push there. Let's talk about Svalbard. It's technically part of Norway. This is really interesting, doing some research on this, because it's technically part of Norway, but Russia obviously has settlements there too. And we have this headline from March: we need to pay closer attention to Svalbard. We've got it up on the map as well. That is where it is, very much north. Do we have to pay closer attention to Svalbard? Does Moscow have its eyes on this archipelago?
Definitely. Norway, who is in charge of Svalbard, definitely keeping an eye on it much closer. This is demilitarized area because it belongs to Norway, but on very specific and unprecedented conditions, which is it belongs to Norway thanks to the 1923 treaty, which allows Norway to be there, but not to have military bases, for example. But Russian presence is there as well in the second largest town of this archipelago, which is Barentsburg. There are about 400 Russians living over there. And there used to be most of them were miners, and they were, but the coal mine that was exploited there, it's not profitable anymore. So Russians need to find a way to explain their presence over there, because they need to have economical presence to be there. So now they are investing in tourism. That's at least what they are saying. They've put a consul to be in charge of it. The consul, aged like 55 or something like that. He even said in one of the documentaries that that were recorded before war in Ukraine, he said that that used to be the place that Russia was sending the oldest diplomats over there as their last post, but now I'm here, I have energy, I'm going to change everything, and we're going to be a great city, and we are inviting everyone to visit Svalbard, to visit Spitsbergen, the island that Barentsburg is located on, and he's definitely a signal that something is changing and that they want to bring more Russians to the island, but also tourists, and they want to increase their presence over there, and they want to make it attractive to Russians. And so something is definitely going on, and in response, Norway is changing local laws to make life a little bit more difficult to them.
And clearly, as you mentioned, Russia trying to qualify its presence there through the tourism. This is a really key strategic island, right? This is a really key strategic point. And another key strategic point, of course, that has been well documented is Greenland. I mean, this was a big part of conversation over the last year. An autonomous territory of Denmark, but very much coveted by Donald J. Trump. Why, if you could spell it out for me, why did Greenland become such a big part of the debate? And again, we have a map here showing exactly where that is.
Greenland is important because it's useful for every part you mentioned, including Denmark, that is in control over this island right now. Denmark is a small country, but control over Greenland gives them a huge advantage in any negotiations they have. It's not only about, for the US, it's not only about rare earth minerals that might be discovered there after the ice melt, but also because it would give a huge advantage for the US in the Arctic. And US, as well as Russia, would love to be an Arctic superpower.
It's worth remembering also that this is the world's largest island, so it's pretty big. And I've just read today that the Danish government has set up a so-called night watch in the foreign ministry, actually, to monitor Donald Trump's comments after this row over Greenland. Is there a feeling that Greenland is sufficiently protected right now or not? And I'm not just talking about physically, but also from political influence.
This got even more interesting after we saw this month a new strategy from the US, the security strategy they published this month. The Arctic and the Greenland is mentioned there, and it's still, and the US still has an eyes on it, and nothing has changed since Donald Trump said that they will get Greenland one way or another in this exact words. Let's remind everybody. So
it's still on the table.
It's still on the table, and but Greenlanders, and we spoke with them in Iceland as well, they want to be independent. But if they will be able to keep themselves safe on their own, it's a big question mark.
Now, we're running out of time, but very briefly to end, you've done a lot of research, you've obviously had first-hand experience on the ground. Is the Arctic moving away from stability and towards confrontation?
It's getting ready for any instability, that's for sure. Russia is getting ready, Greenland, Iceland, Svalbard, Norway, every party is getting ready for any confrontation. And that's competition, and that's what is for sure growing over there.
Watch this space. Roksana Juarez, TVP World Managing Editor, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And that's all for this edition of News in Depth here on TVP World. Do stay with us for more news and analysis. I'm Aaron Darman. Goodbye for now.